There he is. Good afternoon.
Good morning, Ron. Can you hear me clearly? I didn't get to do a sound check today, so it's up in the air at this point.
Yes, and actually the picture right now is pretty good too. So, but you're not moving much.
No, not yet. Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
last time, even a little bit of movement created blurriness. This time, it seems to be a little sharper, which is always good. I got up today with a little bit of a sore throat, so I might be keeping it shorter or not. It depends.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Sometimes the time can go quite quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased with some of the comments that people are making. Some people, not everybody. It's not a wide audience topic that you're delivering, but the people that are supposed to hear and that are ready are paying attention, which is a good thing.
Exactly. And the thing is, I haven't gotten to the appealing parts yet. I'm still talking about, things that seem to be drudgery for most people. Methods and practices and this and that, and abstract theories. So maybe I can intersperse a little more philosophy in the, or at least make it a little juicier. Because as this goes on, there's going to be talk about abilities, what abilities you can actually cultivate directly, and which will move you to cultivate even further abilities. It's a layering process. People usually think of abilities in terms of what they've been taught and what they've seen on TV and comic books and religion, things like that. And the personal experience of it is quite different. There are also people who experience abilities without this perspective. You can cultivate them directly through your personal will, basically forcing it through. And that's what occultists do in many ways. But this can drive people nuts. I mean, I've seen people go literally, neurotic people just go crazy or psychopathic. There's also a perspective that's beyond the matrix, where there's the psychopathic meme is like an atmosphere. And if you can resonate with it, and if you resonate with it, you end up embodying it, and without knowing, you can be possessed by it, where you start acting out the shadow, and you're not aware of it. So I'll repeat this stuff again in the thing, but the
well, I'm going to just flow with it now because we're already starting. We're not going to have what I thought was going to be a preliminary conversation. This is part of it.
Okay, that's cool. So basically, I'm focusing on this thing called gnosis or awareness cultivation, which is not necessary when you develop abilities for their own sake. For example, we all know about the mind control stuff, and we all know about the remote viewing experiments that have been done, the psychic research that has been declassified. Much of it's still going on, but I believe it has been more or less shut down because it has failed. And the reason it has failed is for the same reason that most occultism I see has also failed. I mean, in the 90s, I'd witnessed stuff that would just blow your mind. In terms of the psychopathic continuum where I used to live, there was a lot of so-called black magic going on. Not by elite and whatever. I mean, you had sheriffs and judges and groups that were allegedly connected to satanic ritual and stuff. But, in the United States, but also it became a trend and a fad amongst the younger generation, and it was encouraged that way because it increases the total psychopathic field, and the probabilities that a psychopath would intend become more likely. I noticed this in the military as well. When the general was in a bad mood, everybody was in a bad mood, even if the general never crossed their path, because everybody was automatically obedient to the top of the pyramid. So their psyche was automatically conditioned to resonate with the mood of the top of the pyramid and the intentions of the top of the pyramid. And beyond the generals, of course, there were the ministers, and these guys were corrupt. One of them, the defense minister, when I was in my 6-month military boot camp thing, he's in jail now because the guy basically bought shoddy whatever or allegedly paid money to buy nothing and said, well, I'm buying submarines and tanks, and he bought nothing and pocketed the money, but most of the money actually went back to the banks and to German corporations and to all of this thing. It was a massive attempt because Greece is a very, very wealthy country in terms of minerals, and we have the greatest variety of herbal products in the world, and wines and this and that. All of this has been suppressed through subsidies, just intending not to have the wealth come up, because then there would be a self-sufficiency which would demand a kind of radical solution as we find in Syria and Libya. In fact, these days now the media is out, because there's massive strikes and upset and a lot of things going on. One person basically who is probably just like the guy who shot the people at the U.S. base. This guy just went and killed somebody from an opposite political party, and he was paid to do so to instigate this idea that there's going to be a civil war. So the media is coming out and saying, you people better sit down and shut up, or else we're going to bring Al-Qaeda. And they're not saying that, but they're saying we're going to be just like Libya and Syria if you don't sit down and become good, obedient slaves and give up everything and give up your business. So, but,
I want to interject something here. I watched part of an interview from yesterday with General Zellini, which I posted on my Facebook wall. And he gives an overview of some of the things that are happening that I find very fascinating. It's connected to Swiss Indo, which you've heard me talk about. But once we finish today's talk, Aristo, I'm going to go finish listening to that, and I would recommend that everybody takes the 2+ hours to do it, because he talks about a lot of the dynamics that are happening in our world today from a very interesting perspective. Anyway, I wanted to interject that in relation to what you're talking about with the world situation of the elite trying to foment a civil war, basically, in all the countries to create as much unrest and turbulence as possible.
Well, that's the big threat. They basically have this Islamic fundamentalist army, which isn't even really Islamic, and they plan to kill them off anyways, but they want to use them as, well, we're going to just bring them into Europe and America now to have them just do the same thing as Syria, so people are on their knees begging for, you can do this or that or whatever solution you want, but when your house is going to be blown up by these, because people are calling bullshit. They're saying this is all bullshit. And it actually is, because this isn't an infinite population of jihadis. There are not that many of them. You can't spread them out all over the world. But even one or two here and there, they're hoping that people are hair-triggered paranoid, which is not quite true at this point, because people are very, very fed up. The people in Turkey are still fighting. It's not a civil war. These things are revolutions, or rather counter-revolutions. And you can realize, when you look at the television here, you're just ready to just pick up something and run to the station and grab and hang the newscasters by the highest pole. They're completely obviously, some traitor is telling you to kill yourself and kill all your loved ones on some impossible level of cockiness. So this is going into my more esoteric topic here, in the sense that we develop these abilities not in isolation, in the sense of being in a locked room and trying to, get enlightened and this and that. We develop these abilities in tandem with the increasing stream of information availability. Because even if it's disinformation, and even if it's propaganda, you can trace the vibration of the lie through let's say, the newscaster, whoever he is, to who's behind them. Because the pyramid is a structure, and any kind of hierarchical pyramid is a resonance that permeates from top to bottom. This is why these people want to create pyramids, because the one at the top is in control. Literally, because of this kind of structure. It's practically an occult structure. But you can trace pyramids, and you don't have to go and curse or hurt the person that you confront. I have neighbors who are very much into the establishment, and I can perceive what's behind them. not people, places, and names and numbers and stuff, but I can perceive the vibration. So it's the vibration that needs to be addressed, and it's generally the vibration. In India, for example, there are mantras, and in the West as well, that you read this thing, your hair stands up, because they're basically curses, and they're very, very graphic in terms of the horrible things they'll do to the offender, calling down the gods and this and that and the other. This is simply to channel the sense of outrage, which is rightful. And in order to bring the shadow and reconfigure it and integrate it and then focus it on the vibration that's offensive. Because when you attain a mystical perspective, like we've said repeatedly, you view people, places, things as acts. You view them as vibration. And I noticed, before, of course, I expected this, when I mentioned, conditional love versus unconditional love, and it's not really a versus, most people will develop their right brain, for example, with these esoteric practices because they're overly balanced on the left brain, because they're too rational, too fragmented, etc., etc. However, the point is not to deny the left brain and deny the left brain and go directly to the right brain and only, because the right brain is very, very impersonal. The right brain connects everything so much that there's no individual distinction. You have a big pattern, and the whole pattern, when something moves in the pattern, the whole pattern moves. And you can notice this, and it's very, very, grounded. You can be grounded when you do this, but all our sense of individual distinction and conditionality that many spiritual people seem to reject is gone without that left brain perspective. So the point is to find the balance between the two. It's the same thing in yoga. That's the big emphasis. When you develop these abilities, there is an immense amount of life force going through you, at a physical, at an etheric level, at all levels. You do not want this life force to be polarized, because polarized channels are very narrow. They're specialized, they're meant for specific activities, even if the specific activity is a big picture addressing or viewing of the situation. However, the balanced situation, when all of the force is in the central channel, for example, like in the Kundalini thing, then you have a distribution that everything goes where it is needed. You don't have to be perfectly equipoised between left and right, up and down and whatever, in a perpetual state of pivotal balance, but you can be dynamically swirling and dancing, going everywhere. I mean, just like a tightrope walker can lift up a leg, can do a twirl, can do a backflip, still land on the rope and not fall, and navigate the razor's edge of paradoxical living, shall we say, without getting cut.
Good analogy.
Exactly. I mean, this is how the Tibetans saw it, how the Hindus saw it, the Westerners as well have similar analogies, is that if you don't get this state of balance, you're going to be cut by the paradoxes you cannot digest. And it's a dynamic balance, and the matrix cannot stand it, and it will resist it every step of the way. Your own body will resist it in many, it's not like, okay, meditate and get healthy. In most cases, as the life force increases, it's going to challenge patterns that are adapted to basic, very low levels of existence, of existential expression. Very low levels of emotion. We go crazy if a little more emotion pops up. The body responds. It has to, we have to cry, we have to laugh. All of these things are very good expressions and integrated in our social structure, but you can have an emotion moving through your body that's 10 times as strong as what would make a normal person fall on the ground in tears or in giggles or whatever, and completely have a calm face. You're not repressing anything. In fact, you're very, very relaxed and you're connected, and it becomes blissful. This is often misinterpreted as being cold or whatever, but it can't be, because the other person will feel the vibration. And it will be something that will enliven them, and the same thing with everything. It doesn't mean you have to look like the Buddha all the time. But when there's balance, everything occurs in a much more natural, spontaneous manner. Causality takes on a different frame. you need to really experience it to understand the value of it. So at this point, I'm speaking to people more who have a sense of it, maybe a little bit of a sense. And I've said this before, an intuition, a memory, something where they can actually move, because I can share information and I can probably share a little bit of energy, but I cannot force conviction on anybody. And this is something that's why they say, well, you have to have that karma and this and that. Basically, you need to be able to recognize the value of it, and not just from me, but anywhere. What I have noticed, however, is that I have had a harder time because much of the information out there is not clear. There's a lot lost in the translation. The mentality of the Westerner is different. Western occultism comes from Egyptian occultism and paganism, and there's been, with the religious persecution of Christianity mixed in, and this creates a lot of misunderstanding. So there's a way, however, to understand it that's based on the most immediate sense of experience. So what I'm providing is to those people who have a little bit of intuition, the importance that, look, there's a seed of natural conviction. Whatever your techniques, whatever your methods, whatever, it's the conviction that is most important. You can't force this. You can't pressure yourself. If you're too goal-oriented, then you're going to miss all of the signs that are occurring within you, the signs of change, because you're so focused on getting it over with, which really means you don't want to go through the process. You just want the goal, and that can't happen. Many of these traditions talk about sacrifice and payment, and nothing is for free. Well, there really is no sacrifice. What it is basically the whole you can't get something for nothing means that you need to put your own effort and your own passion and your own conviction into it. This is what you offer, basically. And then as you do so, it's just like exercising physically. You put your passion, your conviction, your commitment, and then you get results. Eventually, you learn to relax in doing so, because that's another paradox. I mean, you go through this humongous super effort, but you're completely relaxed when you do it. And as you do this, then your intuition opens, and you can translate that intuition from an amorphous field of some holistic pattern into specific, precise elements of understanding. And again, you can take all of the elements of understanding, all of the vibrations of the people, and combine them into a great whole, and dance back and forth between these two. One can begin to experience this with this process that I mentioned last time, and I'd like to culminate this time, called sensory reversion or synesthetic reversion. Actually, it can be called sensory inversion. Very, very simply put, what it does is that instead of focusing, let's take your sight for example, instead of focusing on seeing something, you focus on the act of seeing. It's almost like a meditation. You go and you sense what it is like to see instead of what it is I'm seeing. The same thing with hearing. Instead of focusing on listening to what is being said or the quality of the sound or this and that, focus on your own hearing action, on the process of actually converting the sound into meaning, into some kind of sense of vibration. And it helps to do this when you go into the place where, for example, the light meets the retina, where the place where the photons are converted to electrical signals that go into the brain. Then in the inner ear, you have the same process. Sometimes it helps to do bone breathing, that method that I expressed and wrote about in the last video, in the three little bones of the inner ear. You can tune into them. Sometimes it helps to look at an anatomical picture, but you can tune into them and just breathe in and condense energy and then relax, and you can feel your ears open up. The thing is, you're focusing basically on sensory conversion, on the pattern of the senses. You're moving from, if every sense is connected to an element of the five senses, you move from all of the traditional four elements to the fifth element, the ether, and from the fifth element, it's a hop, skip, and a jump to consciousness, to the awareness, the perceiver, the so-called subject, which is also essentially an act within a medium. And so as you do this, you get a better sense of moving into the medium. Now, eventually you realize that, well, the feeling I get from seeing is very similar to the feeling I get from hearing and even smelling. They're just different channels, and you begin to get a sense of the unified state of perception that's beyond the five senses. And this is the doorway into the field of awareness, the awareness field, the field where all of the vibrations are basically waves within it, whether they're sensory waves or thought waves or feeling waves or whatever. And this is a living field. And identifying this field is essentially what they call samadhi or the 0 point state, because it's vibration free. There's a big emphasis on quieting thoughts. This is not to be stupid, but the whole point of it is to focus more energy on feeding the innate sense of the medium. As you do this and become more comfortable with it, eventually, well, you can think all you want when you're connected to this medium. Your reference is simply different, so thoughts completely have a different nature. You cannot be fooled in this way. Distortion becomes very, very acute. And some people resist that because they become hypersensitive in the beginning. Many people are hypersensitive because they're still beholden to conditioning, but still sensitive to its distortions. So it's like being slapped in the face continuously and not knowing who's hitting you or being able to do anything about it. This kind of thing will help you do something about it, and it's the key, it's the doorway beyond energy work to be able to develop abilities. But anybody can easily... Here's a very, very simple practice. We all know the concept called bedroom eyes. When you look into a lover's eyes, there's a certain gaze that drinks in the other person. And the other person can feel that. All of a sudden you're connected. If two people look at each other that way, they're in love. This is conditional love. And somebody commented there's no such thing as conditional love. Love is either unconditional or it doesn't exist. And again, people love their children unconditionally, meaning no matter how that child is, they still love them. But would they love them the same way if the child was not a child? If it was somebody they adopted, yes, maybe. But what if it was somebody else, some old man or a rock or the sky or whatever? Love is unconditional, and that's very, very important, and that's where the right brain comes in. But then you also have left brain love. You see, the emotional centers are on both sides. It's not just the one side is intellectual and the other is emotional. And we connect to our sensate feeling because the brain centers also, they go from the top of the head down through the ears, the sensate cortex, and this can connect with all the other areas as well when we're resonating. All our emotions are processed, and this is just the cortex, the outside. I mean, we're really interested in the deeper layers of not just the brain, but the central nervous system and all of our cells, because these are the grounding points of the energy field. Enlightenment through the crown and from the root and all the areas, the openings of the widenings of the chakras, so to speak, occurs when the energy and material fields bond together in the same awareness field perception. When you do that, you have an infinite ability of, actually it's gradually developed, an ability to develop the energy field in a way that it can do many, many things it normally cannot do. All of these things about levitation, invisibility, they're all connected to the energy field. If you don't want people to notice you, you can tune your energy field in a certain way. Nobody's going to see you. You could be invisible. If you don't want the authorities to notice you, but all your friends to notice you, you can tune it that way too. If you want people to like you more, then you resonate that way. It's not manipulation, because that's like saying, well, someone's handsome, and all these people like the person. Well, they're not manipulating everybody. It's just who they are. So this is basically moving into who you are and noticing the changes in the environment that occur as a result, because you are connected to the environment. When you move into sensory inversion, you do not block your senses. This is one method actually of doing it, going into a sensory deprivation tank, or there's a yogic posture where you close your eyes and your ears and your nostrils and you meditate that way. that kind of forces you to turn into and find this sensory feeling because you're not distracted. But it kind of disconnects you from the world as well. There's another method that's called the method, well, in Western terms it would be translated as the method of disrupting the matrix. But it's really the gaze of Shiva the Terrible, literally, or something like that. Basically what it is to focus on your retinas and on the process of seeing and on the loving feeling you have when light strikes your retinas. Feel light, look at something beautiful, as I had said before, and feel the light strike your retinas and feel the love resonate at the level of your retinas as the photons are converted into electrons. This is a loving process. And at the same time, look at the world. Be aware of the world. And what this will do, you do not project love into the world or force yourself to love everything and whatever. You are basically loving your own perceptual process. And this is creating a feedback loop with the perception that has a tendency to dissolve conditioning, because conditioning and true love, balance between conditional and unconditional love, cannot exist. Conditional love is not to be confused with conditioned emotional response. These are two different things. Conditional love is simply our preference in manifestation where everything is differentiated and we focus our energy more in one area than in the other. It's what we do. It's a good thing. It's how we create. And unconditional love is simply the recognition that underlying all of these forms is a common oceanic essence that emanates from the very center of each form as well. This is not dogma. This is something that people can begin to experience for themselves if they're simply open to it. It's not like, well, he said it this way, so this is what it is, and as I practice it, I'm just going to force it to be, I'll prove it. Instead, it's basically, well, it's a possibility. I have all these other beliefs. Why not put this one up and move to focus in this manner and see what I experience? Is the matrix the way things are when I experience things this way, when I balance my perception between the objective world and the internal world, when I actually feel the act of seeing, hearing, smelling, touching as an act of love? And, of course, the best way to do this is to go where conditional and unconditional love are already there, which means that if you love something like a flower, oh, I love how beautiful this flower is, I can feel unconditional love through the flower or the little puppy or the child or my lover much easier because I've already chosen to be open to it for whatever reasons. Once I experience that balance point and cultivate it and it becomes natural for me and it opens up my energy channels, then I can move to experiment with things that are not as appealing. And then I can discover the nature of my conditional choosing and honor it. Because the unconditional love can be there even when I say no to something. It is a fallacy to think that you have to always say yes, to be a yes man to everything. And thus you say yes to the suffering of people and yes to letting the psychopaths go or whatever. And here I was thinking about something. I don't know how much. Do we have enough time?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
That's right. My camera stopped working quite a long time ago.
Okay.
It's 28 and a half minutes.
Okay, I'm going to close with this. I hope my image should still be recorded, right?
Yes, your image is looking fine, but my image froze up a long time ago.
Okay, well, the tables are turned, so let's proceed. Just a few more things. One more thing, actually. From sensory inversion, the important thing is that if you can do this, you can move into meditation. Meditation is only a short step away. Concentration, or basically, is simply the act of holding this state. Spend 5 minutes or whatever, 1 minute, whenever you remember it. Focus just on your eyesight if you like. And focus on this kind of seeing, or non-seeing, but feeling what you see, or feeling the act of seeing. Practice bedroom eyes. Practice bedroom listening. The basic listening deeply into the act. And when you listen to music, it's really cool. I mean, if you listen to music that you really like and open up your eardrums and feel the sound penetrate your bones and feel your inner ear and the vibration in stereo, the sound becomes space. you can actually feel your aura vibrate like it's a speaker. And then you can connect the light and the sound together, your eyesight, and this synesthetic interconnection, because when you're an embryo, it's only internalized, but if you connect it with the world vibrates. And this vibration is something in which you can learn to participate, and that's where meditation comes in. But it helps us to be able to hold the attention naturally, in a relaxed manner, and progressively. And I want to say one more thing. Sometimes people on your site say things that seem very off the wall. Like the one guy that keeps saying that, the psychopaths are basically trustees and that we have to basically trust them or they hold something in trust for us.
That's insane.
Exactly. It's exactly insane. However, within that insanity, there is a seed of truth. And that is the fact that our shadow is held in trust by them. And that as we reclaim our shadow, they don't have access to it. They don't have access to all these vibrations of fear and suffering and whatever they seem to throw at us, and they want to convert it into real-time events against us. So long as we are in denial and avoiding things and not opening up to our true self, all of the things that we deny have to go somewhere. And if we are especially focused on polarizing toward this artificial or at least rudimentary concept of goodness, which is the easy concept, the polarized concept of denying everything that doesn't fit into it, then all of what we don't accept is going to go somewhere. And that is essentially, from a bigger picture perspective, held in trust by the psychopath, even though they're doing so unconsciously. But they don't want to let go. But they will, because they don't have the capacity to hold all that. And that's why they want us to stay asleep, to stay obedient. The more we awaken internally, the more we could notice changes occur, both externally, but also at levels we never recognized before. And that will lead to solutions that we cannot even conceive of today. So this is, one of the reasons why I'm emphasizing all of this, and next week we're going to take it from there.
Thank you, Aristo, and I again want to emphasize to listen to Lieutenant General Daryl Zellini, Military Forces Chief of Staff, United Nations Organization God, Sky, Earth, and the interview that I posted on my website, and I'll actually put the link to that on this video because I've mentioned it twice now. And hopefully, even though the camera got lost, hopefully the sound is all intact and we'll flow from there. I'm going to be trying to call you on another call again shortly, so don't go anywhere.
Okay, I'll definitely go and listen to this as soon as we're done here.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll talk to you again soon.